I honestly don't know why I picked this one up a few months back. There's nothing especially remarkable about this bottle, but I haven't done Durkee yet, and I'm always drawn to bottles with some contents inside. I wasn't familiar with anise, so I opened it and I smelled it, and it's the flavor of black licorice. So I wonder though, what would you use that flavor in outside of black licorice? Anyways, it turns out that Durkee is a much bigger brand than I imagined, so let's jump into this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. Our story is about a guy named Eugene Return Durkee. What an interesting name. His siblings have some interesting names too. He was born January 18th, 1825. Think about that for a second. It's almost exactly 200 years ago. That's mind-boggling to me. He was born in New York, and he lived in New York his whole life. He married Helen, and from what I can tell, they had 2 boys, 2 girls. They were married for about 40 years when Helen died at the age of 60. Eugene then remarried a lady named Harriet. They were in their 50s and 60s when they married, so they didn't have any kids together. They were married about 11 years when Eugene died. So let's look at this record of his family tree written in 1901. It says that he's living in 1901. Skipping down, it says that he was in the drug business in Attica and Buffalo, New York, until 1852, when he removed to New York City, where he established what became the largest spice house in the United States. The first time I find his name in the paper is in his marriage announcement in 1850. In the 1850 census, Eugene is 25, showing to be a druggist. His mom's living with them, along with one of their siblings. I didn't look into if it's his or her sister, but she's also with her husband. Before the year is out, in December 1850, is the first time I see his business mentioned in the paper. This one is advertising Durkee's baking powder. Pick up a package for only 1 shilling. So I was curious because I didn't know that America ever used shillings for currency. So I did a quick search, and apparently, since we were under the rule of the British at first, we were using pounds and shillings and pence in some of the colonies. All the colonies kind of made their own state money for a while there, and interestingly enough, one of the more widely accepted forms of payment throughout the colonies was the Spanish dollar, which resulted in the United States money being denominated in dollars as opposed to pounds. And I did not know that. Moving on, 1851 ads in the paper advertising for Lundy foot snuff and perfumery, combs, and brushes. This one continues on by saying, dealer in drugs, medicines, perfumery, brushes, oils, glass, etc. The next year, at 1852, is when he moved to New York City. I found this in old Google Books' 1858 Canada directory. It lists the address in New York, and I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a photo of the Canada location or just showing the New York location, but it's already quite a large factory. It says 181 Pearl Street, corner of Cedar Street. So let's go see if we can find that. So here we are, the corner of Pearl and Cedar Street. So many times the roads don't match up anymore, so this one still does. Although I would definitely say that the building was much prettier back then. 1858, he's just a seller of random necessities. Here's an ad for leather preservative and waterproof blacking for your boots, harnesses, or carriage tops. The next year, in 1859, we see his factory in another magazine. This is the first ad that I saw him with his cooking extracts. Here's a new term for me, saleratus. I've never heard of it. So I went to this site and did a little digging, and it says that it was found along the Oregon Trail in shallow lakes. It was a flaky alkaline substance that could be harvested and ground into a fine powder and used as baking soda. Apparently, it didn't need any refinement. It could be used as is as a leavening agent. The ad also mentions potash, which I've heard of potash, but I'm not sure what it was used for. According to Wikipedia, it's ashes from plants or wood ashes. The ashes are then soaked in water, and interestingly, the word potassium is derived from the word potash. It says it was used in bleaching textiles, making glass, ceramic, or making soap, which is what this ad is saying that you would buy it for, to make your own soap. So here we are, 1860, E.R. Durkee and Company's Select Spices. This one says it's in tin foil. This is a new idea to pack spices in a tin. He's credited with being the first guy to do this. I found somewhere on the internet these containers for the pepper and the mustard. 1863 tax assessment. He's listed here. It says his income exceeds $10,000, and over here it says $16,283 at 5% tax for a total of annual taxes of $564 for him. $16,000 a year was damn good money for 1863. I calculated roughly what it would be in today's money, and it's estimated to be between $575,000 and $592,000 for a year. So, needless to say, this guy was doing very well for himself. 1865 census, Eugene is 40 now, and he's got his 2 boys living there, a nephew, and his mother and father-in-law. 1867 directory, Durkee and Company is listed at a new location, 135 Water Street. And that brings us here. So I found this. Now, there's 2 different buildings in this illustration, so maybe one of them is the Water Street location, and maybe the other is their next location on Long Island. Here's an ad in 1875, the Practical Cookbook. Here's an 1875 ad for a salad dressing, and I'm almost positive their idea of salad dressing and our idea are 2 totally different salad dressings. Here's an 1878 passport for Eugene. This was before they would put photos on them, so they describe their features. He's 53, 5'7.5", narrow forehead, hazel eyes, bearded chin, dark hair tinged in gray. 1879 and 1880, the ads look very familiar, bold, eye-catching lettering. 1880, 57-year-old Eugene is living with his first wife still and his youngest daughter. 1883, Durkee is listed as treasurer for the Board of Trade and Transportation. 1883, a wanted ad in the paper looking for girls who have long experience filling, corking, and labeling, wrapping, and packing perfumery and medicines, and thoroughly understand it. No others wanted. According to that first piece that we read, he retired from business in 1884. By this time, his boys are running the business. Oh, and here's an 1886 advertisement with some pictures of some bottles. Worcestershire sauce and a salt shaker. And I really want that salt shaker. Look at that metal top for it. He is very specific when they put help wanted ads in the paper. This one says, gardener wanted. Competent to take charge of a small place, must understand his business, able to milk, not afraid to work, no glass, married, only 1 young child, references required. So when he means garden, does he mean a garden, or is he talking about some small farm because there's milking involved? So 1896, sudden death of David Moore. Mr. Moore went to work apparently in good health. He sat himself down at his desk and began opening his mail, talking with several employees, when suddenly he fell back in his chair. Everyone thought he fainted, but it turns out that he died. The coroner said heart failure. He was just 54. It says he was made partner of the firm some years ago. 1896 Everyday Housekeeping magazine ad. 1900 census. Remember, Eugene had been retired for almost 20 years now. He's 75 now, and his second wife is 61. They've been married for 9 years here. It says Eugene is now a farmer. 2 years later, Eugene died. It says he's been having kidney and lung trouble. This says that Eugene Jr. is now currently head of the firm, and his other son William lives in Seattle, Washington. 1907 ad for black pepper. And here's 1909 ad for several spices and extracts. 1918, the theft of thousands of dollars worth of spices from the Durkee Company plant was learned through the arrest of 4 men, 3 of whom were employees of the firm. So, one of the dudes runs his own business. He has a 3-story building where he sells various merchandise. He paid a few employees of Durkee, a driver, a shipping clerk, and an assistant shipping clerk, to steal some spices from the plant for him. One of the 3 guys confessed, and he snitched on the other guys involved. They had moved to a new location. We see it in this next ad, a wanted ad, which lists the address as 82 Corona Avenue, Elmhurst, Long Island. This location is now the Elmhurst Educational Campus, which hosts 3 separate high schools in there. Apparently there was a beautiful garden on the grounds of the factory. In 1918 and in 1922, the garden made the newspaper talking about its beauty. In 1923, there's an employee who's died, but I found it interesting that they mentioned that he was employed by Durkee and Son for 35 years. Firstly, 35 years to me means that the company seemed like it was a decent enough company to work for. And secondly, I hadn't heard of it called Durkee and Son. Now, I'm wondering if that's the current Durkee, Eugene Jr., and his son, or was it named that before Dad died? In 1926, Eugene Jr. died at age 76 of pneumonia after he had an operation for appendicitis. Well, this answers my question about Durkee and Son. Eugene Jr. only had 2 daughters. His obituary continues to mention his love for flowers and says he created one of the finest gardens on Long Island at his home and around the grounds of his plant. It says he believed in affording pleasant surroundings for his fellow workers. Well, now that it's a high school, I see that all the garden is gone. After Eugene Jr. dies, it's hard to say at this point who's in charge of the company. I can't locate a city directory for this time frame. Here's a look inside the plant in 1927. Here's some girls working the salad dressing machine. The caption says, Durkee founded his company in 1851, and by 1857 his original secret recipe dressing for salads and meats won numerous awards for excellence. In 1906, the government turned to Durkee, who was Eugene Jr. at the time, to write the federal standards for spices and extracts. I found that interesting. This confirms my hunch and says Durkee's reputation for being a good employer is evident in the several years of documentation of photographs which include playful group portraits, gardens on the grounds, and the staff dining rooms. It closes out by saying that the Durkee Company was absorbed by Glidden Paint Company in 1980, but I found that they were part of Glidden as early as 1949. In fact, when I went to check, Wikipedia says that Glidden bought them out in 1929. So that would be only 3 years after Eugene Jr. died. Skipping ahead, in 2004, Durkee got bought out by Associated British Foods. So that's that. So online, I found several logos for Durkee, and I'm not sure the dates for most of them, but here's the current logo. So my bottle is glass, not plastic. It says SCM Corporation, and it was manufactured in the Cleveland, Ohio plant. On the bottom is a 73, so that sounds like a pretty good guess for the date. That would make it 51-year-old extract in here. So I'm going to leave you with a Durkee commercial from the 1990s, and that is going to do it for this one. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.
Easter dinner just seems a little bit off without it. The Durkee green bean casserole. Made only with Durkee French fried onions.